Hi everyone, it's Sam from the Danger Planet, and today we are returning with another keyword tier list. Today we're going to the Bayou and we're going to be talking about Mah Tucket and the Tricksy keyword. All right, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the Mah Tucket and the Tricksy keyword, and you know how these lists go. We're going to go over for both titles the models that you think where you're pretty much always going to hire, ones that you'll basically never hire, and then ones that you'll hire in some matchups. And today we're joined by Maeve from the Bayou Breakdown and the Boring Conversation podcast. Say hi, Maeve.
Hello.
So Maeve, like me, is a Bayou player, plays a lot of Mah Tucket, and I think is going to have some great insights. So without further ado, I guess let's just start. Take it away. Haku, who's first?
All right. Well, very simply, we have the totem, who you're always going to take. There's never an argument about this. But I guess we'll take this time to expand a little bit about the two different versions of the master. I think one of the more important features about Mah Tucket 1 is she generates pass tokens, and that's super relevant in my opinion because I am a shill for pass tokens. Pretty much nothing really beats them. Being able to go 2 activations in a row, last activation is huge, and there's a little bit of potential payoff in Gremlins for keeping pass tokens or using them, but largely hold your pass tokens. Use it to win initiative. Use it to go multiple activations in a row. Either one. Just do one of those two.
Those are, in fact, the 2 uses of pass tokens.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, there are sometimes uses where, models give you benefits for using them. So sometimes you use them for those. And
Does
using
Fire
them...
have any of those?
Yeah. They have the Pulse Out Focus.
I mean, the big difference between the two is that Mah 1 is fast and punchy. She has diving charge, so she's like super fast. She gets in there, she punches people, she shoves them aside into traps. Mah 2 is more slow and sort of like attrition-y because she's got armor, she can place people, drop people down a hole, that sort of thing. She sort of like props up the rest of her crew just a little bit.
Yeah. And I think it's a relatively good counterbalance between the two as well. Both of them pretty much are still murder your opponent, but in slightly different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll actually talk about the totem now. It's a totem. It's insignificant, 2 soul stones. Doesn't do too terribly much, I feel like, but move your models around. And then, maybe in a blue moon, draw off your top of the discard. Have you ever gotten that off, Maeve?
I've never gotten Forge off on almost any Forge model ever.
I have. I denied Secret Meetup with it.
Wild. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Maeve, you actually run this model. What does it do?
Basically, she does horrible hollering twice. If she can get into like a model that's almost dead, she might smack it with a spoon, but in general she's pushing your models up, or she's trying to push other models away or through pit traps. That's pretty much what she does. She's insignificant, so she can't do schemes, so yeah, she's pushing your own guys.
Landon, any thoughts? We're just moving on.
Horrible Hollering's really good. Having your master be able to just make pass tokens top of turn and then using your totem to push people around, mildly more efficient than using your master to push people around, just saying.
Yeah, the big thing with the little ass is that it lets you, first of all, she like accelerates getting you up the board, which is nice. And second of all, she just lets you correct your positioning mistakes without spending your master's activation. It's a big part of the reason I think this crew is just like really strong and flexible is that if you screw something up, you can be like, oh, never mind, I'm just going to holler him out of position. It's fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Do remember, folks, that it is an attack action and it does suffer from concealment.
Although this crew doesn't have a lot of like always on concealment, so there's a chance that it'll happen with the terrain, but at least it's not like Zipp and Beau where you have to be like, oh god, lead the way as an attack action.
Yeah. it's still, I still hate attack action pushes though, but you're right. It's not terrible. It does have a higher TN though than Lead the Way. All right, I'm just going to move on. That seems about everything. Sparks LeBlanc. This is a model I can actually attest to. Sparks LeBlanc's great. Hostile work environment is an amazing ability. I'm not quite confident on where I'm going to be placing a lot of these models. I'm going to get that out of the way. Everyone knows I hate gremlins. I played against a decent enough of them, though, that I like to think that I know where some of these models will go. And for models that I really, really hate, Sparks LeBlanc will always be one of them. I would surprise me if you don't have him in Mah Tucket, just to, or Mah Tucket 2 at least, just to have more pit trap markers. But I would also think that it's pretty common in both of them, and I'll just let Maeve put them where they actually go. But yeah, hostile work environment, really great ability. Command construct, not the worst, but you're not getting as much value out of it as you are obviously in Mei Fang. So I can see why it's probably not as good in Ma. But Maeve, thoughts?
He's an auto include. I think I can't, especially in Ma 2. I can see sometimes, very rarely, that he doesn't go into Ma 1. But like, not only does he have hostile work environment, he has scrap mines, so he turns scrap markers into pit trap markers, which is really good. He has ride the rails, so while it's not as important with Ma 1, Ma 2 means he can get away. He makes your guys stronger with shielded 2. He has pack with explosives, which is just, it's gamey and kind of stupid sometimes, but every once in a while it is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, I don't see more than a blue moon where you don't take him.
Interesting. Like, I definitely get Sparks is really good, but I always felt like he would be more of like a matchup specific type of model. Like, he's got some good tech on him, but he's kind of expensive. I feel like, if for at least the crews I usually see, I don't see him getting a ton of value in every single matchup, because like hostile work environment's not always the best ability to bring. Like, it's usually good, right? You'll have one or two things, but he's difficult to get to use it well with his stat line and just how hard he is to like get there and keep there. And if you're not using that part of him, I feel like there's a lot of value left on the table you could get other places for 8 stones.
Yeah, so he's definitely an auto include in Ma 2. Just there's too much synergy there, but in Ma 1, I think he's definitely matchup dependent. I'd take him if hostile work environment's good. I'd take him if you know, like the scrap mines thing is good. But my issue with him in Ma 1 is that he asks you to be taking a bunch of models, like basically the other foundry models and like the rock hopper, in order to like turn on a lot of the stuff he does. And sometimes you don't want to do that, and you don't want to hire him if he's like, if you're not generating any scrap and you're not, you know, riding any rails, because he's kind of lackluster if he doesn't have that support. And so he kind of prices you into building your crew a certain way, and sometimes I don't want to build the crew that way. So I'd say in Ma 1 he's some matchups. In Ma 2 you just always take him because you don't need anything besides him in Ma 2 to do everything you need to do. But yeah, I'd say
I'll agree with that. I'll agree with that. He's a some matchups. I mean, he's probably more often than not, but I can agree with that a little bit.
All right, on to Tricksy Belle. This is the model that I've never completely understood paying for, but it does have ill omens, and ill omens is a little cracked. And then obviously stat 7 lures are just, you know, pretty decent. That being said, I don't know how much you need ill omens in Ma 1. I guess if you do, is very similar lists that I normally like building of just alphaing. It's always really good. So, you know what? I changed my mind. I don't know. I'm so confused on gremlins. This will be the last time I say this out loud, but I think Tricksy Belle is probably in sometimes, because I definitely feel there's enough decent models you can hire in this crew where you just don't feel like dropping seven soulstones on a support model who pretty much only job is to ill omens and then have lore.
I think she's definitely a some matchups. I think Tricksy is one of those models where like I'll take her and then she doesn't do what I want her to do, or she will, and like, you know, she either affects the game dramatically or she doesn't. Coordinated attack is really, really good, but she has to be within 1 inch. Lure, especially the opposite lure, being able to push people away their move, is really good in GG3, where you have both guard the stash and covert operation. Free loot very rarely comes into play. Maybe now that load 'em up is in, and set the trap and that kind of thing. Of course, Don't Mind Me doesn't matter as much in GG3 right now, but the rest of it, including Ill Omens, is a sometimes with Mah 1 and a sometimes with Mah 2. I wish I'd played more Mah 2 to really have like a stronger opinion on it. But there are times when that backwards lure is incredibly important to winning the game. Like just being able to push people off of scoring objectives.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the game I remember first seeing Tricksy Belle in is actually last year at Captain Con. I guess this year at Captain Con. It'll probably be last year by the time this is out. We were playing Ley Lines because it was still GG2 at that point in time, I think. And between the pass tokens from Mah and the push off of Tricksy Belle, it was really awkward to try and actually score any points.
Yeah, you still beat me
with Ill Opens, you additionally just get to like compound on that by being able to take that last activation. It makes it really tough to try and score points on anything positional if you can take this model. And that's why I feel like a lot of times you'll like swap this model in, I think, when Sparks isn't the model you need, right? I definitely don't think it's an always take by any means, but I was pretty impressed with it in our game.
Yeah, so I'd say I'm going to preface this by saying like this is a gigantic keyword, and almost everything in this keyword is a some matchups higher. So my takes are going to be pretty boring. I think she's some matchups. I think she's higher than Sparks in some matchups because it's very rare that I don't want her. And you guys have pretty much covered what she does. The one thing I'm going to add is that she has built-in coordinated attack, but she also has built-in You're Coming With Me on her melee attack, which generally means you can push somebody into a pit trap. And if you are close enough to them, you can just attack them twice, declare You're Coming With Me both times, and just like basically drag them to hell.
That ability to hit slow and then have Alphonse or somebody just punch them into the, slow them, and then have Alphonse punch them out is really good.
Well, the way this crew deals with big scary models is you basically just throw down a bunch of pit traps and then drop them in the pinball machine, and Tricksy is really good at dropping somebody into the pinball machine. So,
yep.
All right, well, we'll move on to Big Brain Brinn. I am a pretty large fan of this guy, mainly just because he has Arcane Reservoir and, other actually decent abilities, a lot of which involves giving focus to friendly models and then potentially healing them, as well as drawing more cards, on top of having, a intuition, so you can actually know if you really want to draw a card or slap a guy to surge draw a card. There are just so many ways to do it, and you're kind of fine just giving your totem or some other random model you hire slow just to get more cards off surge. So I'm surprised I don't see this guy more in Gremlins. Someone will probably correct me on why, but I'll just put it in all times. I would hire this almost always in both of these guys. He's cracked.
It is very rare that I don't hire Brinn and a Mah crew.
Oh, I thought you were going the other way on that. Oof.
Yeah, no. He has a lot of good abilities. He's a very strong package. He is expensive though. Like he does take up a good chunk of your crew that is not punching things around. I don't know that I really take him as often with Mah 2, because Mah 2 I think is looking for a very specific build. And this is me saying I've only played like maybe 8 games with Mah 2 and been pretty disappointed with almost every game I've played with her. But I think she wants to build like a specific list, and he may or may not sit in it. For Mah 1, I think he's just about an auto include. He's just so good. And when you look at GG3, he has got like all the things you want a model to have. He's tough. He slows people down. He draws you cards. Like all of it's good. All of it's good. That's all I got to say on him. We know, like, anybody who plays Bayou knows he's good.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a game where I thought Big Brain Brinn was bad. I think the only thing I always get a little miffed about is when people over-calculate the possibilities. I think this guy has a lot of good value on his card beyond that action. And I feel like oftentimes people get lost in all of the different things he can do just by having like good positioning or like hitting those daze triggers. And they just like default to always spending 1 AP on calculate the possibilities and forgetting that he just has all this other cool text. Like knew you were going to do that is such an amazing aura against some crews. It's kind of like triggering to watch your opponent just leave him in the deployment zone and just like calculate focus sometimes. Like, don't do that. I'll come smack you.
I played a game at Nova against a Dashel 2 player and knew you were going to do that. Just absolutely wrecked Dashel. Like, he wants so many of his triggers to go off to do all the big damage, and it just didn't happen. But that was in a Brew 2 crew, so...
Yeah, Brinn, I mean, I just got finished saying this crew doesn't have a lot of auto-includes, but Brinn is one of them. Like, Brinn is kind of interesting because a lot of models that are like this, that are sort of these support disruption models, are like, well, you take them when their disruption tech is good, but Brinn has so much tech on his card that there's always going to be 2 or 3 things that are good. Like, if you know, Sober Up isn't good, then the Misdirected Rage is going to be good. I killed Beeb while he was buried turn 1 by charging Calypso and stoning for the Misdirected Rage trigger twice and just having Calypso kill Beeb.
Beautiful.
The only thing that you guys missed that I'll say is that Brinn lets you his bonus action. It takes setup, but you always want to do it because it's one of the very few obeys in the game that lets you trigger a bonus action. So you can use his bonus action to force a Soulstone Miner to bury itself, and then on the miner's activation, it unburies, charges somebody. So you can bury it, unbury in the same turn. It's the only way you can do that, and you can just get someone that way.
That's gross. I've never seen that.
Yeah, I've done it, and it's real gross. It's really good.
That's why you're smarter than me, Sam.
All right, we'll move on to Rockhopper. Rockhopper is a way of generating soulstones and scraps. He's always been a pretty solid model, and now the rules FAQ actually means that he gets to push 4 inches. So that's good. I don't know anybody who tried to actually argue that. I would be surprised if he's not auto-include in Mod 2, but I could definitely see actually just like never hiring this guy in Mod 1. You really don't need the extra scrap delivery / pulsing out a duel, and otherwise all you're really hiring him for is ignoring resistance trigger and maybe, you know, some fun ride the rails possibilities, but that doesn't really seem necessary in the crew.
He's definitely a sometimes hire for Mod 1. I do think he's an auto-include in Mod 2. The reason is because he has specifically good counter tech, like Salvage Sight. Being able to reduce all damage from effects other than attack actions and Hazardous Drain means Nephilim can bite it.
That's a very fair point. I did forget about how big that counter tech can actually be sometimes.
And ignoring resistance triggers, Mod 1 doesn't have a lot of armor ignore. So if you're playing,
he ignores triggers and armor. It's important.
And armor, yeah. So if you're playing him there, like, he just comes in when you need him to. Getting Soulstones back is, I mean, it's pretty good. I tend to spend a lot of Soulstones getting Ma's trigger. Just because knock aside, things like that are so important for doing that extra damage to put people in big pit traps. I like him a lot. I think he does a lot of good stuff. I agree with kind of where he is right now. Some matchups with Ma 1 and auto-include in Ma 2.
Yeah, I think that is probably about right. You're not always going to need what he does, but something we kind of looked over. Like when you bring Sparks, I feel like his value goes up quite a bit, just because difference between a scrap marker when you have sparks and a scrap marker when you don't have sparks, it's pretty huge for the crew, given that he, just can then drop. It's drop or create the scrap. Pretty sure it's drop, right?
Drop.
Yeah, so like you can actually put hazardous directly under your opponent without moving them, unlike with like pit traps, you usually have to create those. So it's worth noting that he has like that little cuteness to him. But otherwise, I think we're pretty solid on him.
Yeah, I mean, like, before Mah 2 dropped, there would be times when I would be running a Mah 1 list that kind of leaned in more towards the Foundry elements, and I think I would play, if he existed then, I would have played him a lot in those. But, like, having him makes me want to play the other Foundry models, like Sparks, and then once I'm playing him and Sparks, I'm like, why am I not playing Mah 2? Because she synergizes more with them. But sometimes you just want to play Mah 1, because, frankly, she's a better master, and she's, like, absolutely grotesque on covert ops. So, yeah, sometimes. I'd say low sometimes, though. He's very much a counter-tech pick. It's never something that I'm, like, proactively taking.
All right. Now we're going to move on to Ruffles. And I'm going to just take my shot here, mainly because I've basically never seen him play. And I'm just going to go with I'm never seeing him play. Mostly because he just seems to die super fast. I think having a stat 6 charge is kind of nice with a built-in suit of your choice. But largely, it's not going to be that amazing. And he has literally no defensive tech. And his stats are atrocious. So really much a one shot, a very big glass cannon. And I don't see that necessarily being great in Mah, because you have other cards to use on other models. And I don't really know what you're reserving for this guy to make him go off. Besides maybe the fact that just a stat 7, 6 cost significant mover that ignores models might be worth it. But I highly doubt that. But Maeve?
2 things would make me play this model. Number 1, if it had run and gun, and I could use the stolen starter gun with the suit built in and a stat 6, amazing. That would change this model entirely. And also, the fact that Beau Peep exists, I think, takes almost everything this guy wants to do, and pushing your opponent's pushing your models and that sort of thing, and negates it because she does so much for your unpack and everything. So yeah, I want to like this guy, but I think there's so many other good models in this keyword that he just gets shuffled down to the bottom.
What if I told you he's a gremlin riding a chicken? Like, isn't that cool?
Yeah,
no, he's a gremlin.
There's already gremlins riding chickens in this keyword. He's like the second tier chicken riding gremlin within the Tricksy keyword.
He is the gremlin riding a chicken we have at home.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah, you guys covered it. This guy's bad. I'm not gonna get too into it. He doesn't do anything really that you need him to do. And this crew is full of excellent models. Why are you taking this?
Yeah. Like I said, if he had run and gun with ramming speed, it'd be, well, I guess it has to be melee attack. So no, even that, never mind.
Maeve, if ifs and buts was candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas.
I know. Yep, he's crap. Move on.
All right. For one more Soulstone, your other gremlin on a chicken, I think is probably... God, is this just barely playable? I mean, Reckless is really good and his grid is really good, but other than that, it's the same exact problem where it just dies from a stiff breeze and the cost went up on it. Yeah, I'm gonna say I don't really like it. I put it just above the other guy though, because it's a better gun. And you can charge twice. I don't even think that's useful. Yeah, it's Reckless. That's the one benefit. I just don't think that's good enough. Maeve?
I don't think you ever hire him in Mah 2 because once again, Mah 2 kind of has a plan and she really wants those Foundry models. They don't get played as often as they used to, but I freaking love these guys. Like, they're super fast. They have Reckless. They get frantic when they get close to dying. So if your opponent can't catch up to them, they just go the fuck off. I don't play them as often as I used to, though. I think just because we get more good stuff. We've just gotten more good stuff. So I would put them in sometimes Mah 1 and never in Mah 2. That's where I'm kneeling on them now. I don't know. I love them. I love the models.
I'm not going to pretend to be the bio expert here, but this feels like a wild take to me. I don't know. From every time I've played against Rooster Riders, it feels very much like if you shoot these things, you are not allowed to miss. Because if you, for whatever reason, do not kill a Rooster Rider when you're trying to put it down, because they read joke or something, or they just have a better card than you for your second swing, these things just kill whatever is near them and was trying to murder them. Because getting the plus to damage is so huge.
Early Mah games played them a lot. Like every Mah like crew at the beginning of like GG0 was 3 riders, 2 bushwhackers, Mah, Brinn.
Yeah, and so like those are the crews I'm used to seeing with Mah, and so it's a little weird to me that they've gone down so much in stock. But I can still believe it with like how much good reliable access to focus and like hitting high damage tracks. But I feel like there's enough factions that don't hit 8 damage on one attack that you can probably not feel bad about playing these models.
I mean, I'm going to court controversy here, increase our viewership count. Like, I hate these guys. I'd never hire them.
Yeah.
Like, they're so fragile. Like, yes, the dream scenario where somebody like tries to kill them and fails, and then they're close enough that they can just like charge in and start murdering stuff. Like, sure, that's great, but they are really fragile. Like really fragile for 7 stones, and the game has just gotten deadlier. So it's a lot easier to just kill them. And like,
especially with willpower, I feel like having willpower 4 now is just.
Oh, it's really bad, yeah. And like, also sometimes your opponent won't kill them, but they'll damage them really badly, and then also like stun them or slow them, and then they get like one sort of half activation of being good, and then they just die in 7 stones. I don't like them. There's just too many good options in this keyword.
And 7 stones is such a clutch point, I think, right? Especially in Bayou, but kind of in the game in general. Like your 7-point model is a big deal. So like they have to be exceptional, I think.
All right, Soulstone Miners, the guys I'm used to auto-including for so long, and now I never hire them in Arcanist, so I'm a little curious about the Gremlins philosophy on these guys. I think Mah could definitely use a good all-around scheme runner, so especially Mah 2, 1? 1. I put him higher in 1, probably. I'm guessing around here and around here. I'm kind of guessing that they're only sometimes take. The destructible terrain thing is now pretty much moot because most people who care about dirt terrain have ways to preventing it from being not destructible. As well as I think actually making the pit trap marker might be decently good, but I'm pretty sure you're still running this for the same reason we're running it in Arcanist. And I did hear the cute play with Big Brain Brinn, and I actually think that's probably pretty decent, but overall using it to refund soul stones, meaning it's a much cheaper cost of model who can go out and do schemes and strats a little bit worse than it could do before, but still pretty efficiently across corners of the map, as well as sometimes just being able to pop up and straight murder a low HP or relevant model off in a corner, which has always just been a pretty great thing for it to do. So I'd be surprised if it's not at least sometimes stick.
I think I hire them less now than I used to, especially because I used to game the system with sparks and put explosives on them and then run them into the enemy deployment on turn, or the enemy, wherever they're clustered up on turn 2, and go, okay, hit me, please. They don't do that anymore. They're still a really nice scheme runner, especially if you're not running roosters to get scheme runners. So I would say sometimes, I think you're correct there. I think more in Mah 1, just because in Mah 2, you have a Rock Hopper who can make soul stones as well. Not as reliably, but still pretty well, and also gel with the rest of the crew a lot better. So I agree with you where they are now.
I'll defer to that. I usually see these guys when I see Mah, but if you're saying they aren't that super common or good, I can agree to that, I guess. They're still good models.
No, I got thermonuclear take incoming. They're always higher in Mah 1. Always. I usually hire 2. Like, I'm gonna try to keep it somewhat brief, but one of the big reasons I like Mah 1 is I think she's the best covert ops master in the game right now, and part of that is these guys. You just make 2 pass tokens, and then you pass till the end of the turn, and then on turn 2 you pop up 2 Soulstone Miners, engaging your opponent's stuff that's trying to do covert, because they're only ignored for friendly schemes and strats the turn they pop up. So your opponent just never scores covert when you're playing Mah 1, at least not turn 2. You can, like, it's basically impossible, and you can usually lock them to 1 or 2 points total. And then there's the aforementioned Brinn trick. There's the fact that Mah 1 is really good at sculpting your hands. You get a high mask, then you bury them with Brinn, you pop them out the same turn, you charge somebody, you don't stun yourself, you cheat in a high mask, and then you teleport the person into a pit trap marker that your Bushwacker set up, and that just is basically the beginning of, as what I've referred to, the pinball machine. Like once you teleported somebody into a pit trap marker and kind of isolated them from the rest of their crew, it's really easy for the rest of your movement abilities to hit them because they're injured, and every time you hit them, they get more injured, and so whatever it is just dead. These guys are nuts. Their stock went way up in GG3, so yeah, always hire Mah 1.
That's more the answer I was expecting.
I haven't really played Mah as much in GG3, but that's absolutely fair. I think they do definitely have. I think I sometimes just get stuck on like, oh, they used to do this.
I'll push back, mainly because I actually play these models in Arcanist. We're not talking about any particular synergy with them, and I haven't actually seen them going up that much in G3. Maybe because I don't have pass tokens until now, but I feel like the fact that they're particularly good in covert literally does mean that they're sometimes over always, because that's one strategy. But I really don't see it anymore. They're just way too fragile nowadays, it feels like, for them to really pull off most of these. Like, if you are popping out turn 2 to do this, then I'm killing your Soulstone Miner, and then I feel like you're normally down more than you prevented me off of scoring 1 quarter, because the likelihood of me scoring 4 of it already wasn't that terribly high.
Well, the difference between them in Bayou with Mah and them in Arcanist is the pit traps are really first. There's the pass token thing, obviously, and maybe you'll try them with pass tokens and Arcanists now that stupid broken
lists are way too tight now.
Yeah, that's fair, but they're really good at pass tokens because they mitigates the vulnerability, because they are really vulnerable. But also just the synergy with them in pit traps is absurd, because the mask trigger on their melee is like one of the situationally strongest triggers I think a model in this keyword has, just because it steals an enemy and it deals an extra point of damage and it injures them and it sets them up to get a lot more. Because if that trigger just said place the model within 6 inches of itself, it gains damage, you deals +1 damage, it gains injured 1, that'd be one thing. But when it does that, it sets them up to repeatedly get dunked into pit traps, which is how this crew kills things. So they're a core integral part of how Tricksy is able to like kill dangerous things, because this is what drops them in the hopper for like rattling them around and killing them at pit traps. So I think one of them is always included, at least, just because it's also cheap. Like it's 6 stones, but you get 1 back every turn. So
yeah, I will say that I take them more often than not. I don't think that I take them absolutely every game, but I do take at least 1 more often than not, just because it is. Mostly because it is just a very reliable way to get Soulstones back, and Mah is always in the thick of it. So sometimes you just need the extra stones.
And like I do think they're not good on Carver Path, but I also just think Carver Path's not a good strat for this keyword. So it's like they're not good in situations where I don't want the keyword anyway.
All right. Well, I'm gonna leave it here.
Sure, no problem.
They're very likely to be included. Maybe I'll to include in 1, but maybe not.
We almost need them in like a 0.5 there.
Yeah, we can't have too many. We can't have too many things. So that's why I think I'm going to leave it towards top of sometimes.
That's fair.
Bushwackers. I think these models have always been kind of insane. Admittedly, they do cost 6 Soulstones, but at least, hey, their gun ignores something, unlike every other gun I've seen in this faction, almost, pretty much, to be honest. I would be a little surprised if you didn't always take these in Mah 2 just to get more pit traps going. Mah 1, I guess, could afford not to really have them, so it'd be maybe around here with Tricksy Belle, but god damn, just pit traps as an ability is so annoying. I hate it, but I guess it makes them more easily destructible. but you're also from the shadow stealth with the ability to make more pit trap markers, and it's just the only big downside of this model is being engaged is their biggest downside, and that's always made them a little depressing if you are willing to just have a small model engage them at more than 0 inches, and they're kind of just like, what the hell do I do now? So yeah, I think I would guess around here. Maeve?
I always take one in Mah 1. Always. They've got a 14-inch gun. They can be from the shadows. They're shooting things with they're usually focus shooting something, drop a trap marker on turn 1. I do think that their stock went down a little bit when stuff like Outflank stopped going, but I always take one in Mah 1. Always. I would say Mah 2, like, build. I think you're mostly correct there. Mah 2 just has so many models she wants to fit in, but like, I have absolutely played, like I said, Mah lists that run 2 Bushwackers. I always take one at least. They can just clean the clock of anything that you need to, that your opponent needs to scheme with real early, and then protect themselves with traps. Like they can set themselves in a little corner somewhere. They have stealth, so you've got to get up on top of them. If you get up on top of them, they have a whole host of pit traps around them. I love them. Just the main thing I see people screwing up with is what people always do with From the Shadows. Do not throw them up to the center line at the beginning of the game. You're going to lose it. It's real dumb. Don't do that.
Yeah, I see that a lot, and so that's why I guess I think of these as some really high variance models. They don't really have a huge stat on their gun. They're really squishy and can die incredibly quickly. The fact that they come with their own pit trap helps against, like, especially a lot of crews where they can't really deal with the hazardous terrain or just getting inside with a focused 6 shot. But I don't know. I always feel like these guys get overplayed, but I also see people take like 3 of these in a crew, and I'm like, that's too many.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion.
By people take 3 in a crew, he means I took 3 of them in a crew in round 6 of the Team Cup, and it was correct. It was the correct decision. They absolutely crushed it. Auto include in Mah 1, maybe auto include in Mah 2. I don't know. I'd buy him in some matchups in Mah 2 because, like you said, the crews are tighter. But again, I'm going to be a broken record here. The way the Mah 1 crew kills things that are dangerous is by having like 7 or 8 pit traps around the board, and you just rattle people between them, and these guys make them. They also are really good at sniping stuff out. Like in the aforementioned triple Bushwacker game, it was against Von Schill with Yannick, and he goes, turn 1, he wins initiative. He's like, you go first. I'm like, fine. This Bushwacker focuses, shoots the steam trunk. I cheat into 13 rams. It dies. And so he didn't have the steam trunk all game. So he had 1 pair of rocket boots that fell off after Schill used it, and that was the only pair of rocket boots he had all game, and that was why I won the game, because his crew was much less maneuverable. That's obviously specific to that matchup, but almost every matchup has some derpy, like weakish model that the Bushwhackers can just line up and draw a beat on and blow off the table, and it's almost always worth more to your opponent to lose that before it gets to do anything than the Bushwacker is. And they also take effort to remove. Like, yeah, if you engage them, that sucks. They also have Scamper. You engage them, you make an attack, they cheat, you hit them, you deal some damage, they push away. They're really good. I love these guys. And 6 stones is not much.
No.
6 stones is also in the range where you can start their like martyrs. They're good. You could do catch and release with them. You could do public demo with them. It's a really good points value for them to be.
Catch and release on Bushwacker sounds like a stretch to me, but
no, that one's not really. But it is what it is.
The best game I had with Bushwhackers was unfortunately not a Mah game. My opponent was playing Ophelia. I was playing Ophelia. I took 2 Bushwhackers, 3 survivors. I had 5 14-inch guns to all his 12-inch guns, and literally just wiped away like 2 or 3 of his models a turn with them. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a 14-inch crit strike gun that ignores cover. It's real good.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll move on to Survivor. This is another one of the Mayfang models I actually hire. That being said, I was never the biggest fan of them. I know a lot of people are, and I know they have their purposes, and pretty much a lot of what it comes down to is a pretty tough to kill 5 Soulstone model that's significant and can ride the rails, as well as having, the quasi 3rd AP with magnetism. So it serves a defense purpose. I don't know how much Mah needs that type of scheme runner in order to be playable, but it's pretty decent in GG3 right now, especially with pass tokens to be, just efficient bodies on the board for things like covert or multitude, pushing up markers because they can push it magnetized to a guy at the construct and push it again for wagons. So I would be surprised if they're not at least on the decent sometimes, just because you don't feel the part of the question is test subjects just better at 1 soulstone less to do the things that it wants to do, and I'm not sure. So I put them at sometimes, just because I'm not the biggest fan of them, because you're not getting the shield that Mayfang gives them, and I still think they die a little too easy even with that. But then again, 5 booms are hard to kill.
Magnetism is in a 14-inch gun. Like, they are sometimes higher. I think like Mah 2, I think maybe wants to play them more because she can kind of give them a little more. Yeah, I would say Mah 2 probably plays them over Tricksy Belle more often. But I love him in Mah 1 too, just because like sometimes you just need to shoot the crap out of people and from a fairly safe distance before Mah goes in and cleans it up. And magnetism is really, really good. They are, as said, very hard to take out. Just, you have to put some effort into taking them out. And they have frantic attack, so they can take 1 damage and shoot 3 times in a turn, maybe 4 times in a turn. I kind of like them. I like 14-inch guns.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of survivors, but I do think as far as your wagon pushers go, they're definitely pretty decent with magnetism. I still don't know if that's enough for me to want to play this crew into wagons, especially with the ability for wagons to just remove all your pit traps and scrap and whatever that this crew really likes to just have around.
Well, you just keep Rock Hopper around, right?
Doesn't work.
Like, maybe this is an okay band-aid for that strat if you really want to play them there, but I don't think you want to play them there.
Rock Hopper doesn't stop the pit traps from being removed by the wagons.
No.
Why?
Yeah, so I don't think
because it's not an enemy effect. It's a strategy effect.
Yep, it's a neutral effect. It's not an enemy effect.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. Huh? That's dumb.
Yeah, so these guys, I just don't think they have a place in any Mah crew, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I really love the models. I have like very fond memories of playing Survivors in 2nd edition. I don't think they were great then either, but they were fun. But no, I don't. I don't know. I can see some matchups in Mah 2, because like when you're just incidentally dropping scrap all over the board, like their mobility is really, really good, which is like an actual genuine reason to take them over Bushwackers. But in Mah 1, I do like 14-inch guns, but I would rather just take 3 Bushwackers before I take 1 Survivor.
Interesting. I wonder if I move it down at all then.
I would not feel sad if it was never higher in Mah 1.
Yeah, right. That's fair. I'll agree with that.
It probably above the Roosters, but
yeah, because the Roosters at least do nothing. I feel like part of the reason is, and we'll get right into it, is that just test subject for 1 Soulstone less, you arguably have one of the most annoying models to potentially deal with in Mah. I wonder how auto hire these models are, just because of the efficiency you can get with them now and how easy pit traps are to just get around. You can have a ridiculously high willpower defense. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I would be, honestly, with the way schemes and strats are now, I would be almost a little surprised if you don't just hire these models. Because I feel like it's really easy to try to, like covert, it's really easy to cheese at one point, super injured them up, stick them next to a point. They'll get it. Maybe they die at the start of next activation, but who cares? They have 4 soul stones, and they still have to pump a decent chunk of damage into these models to get them out of the way. So I would probably most of the time take these just to be guys that can easily walk around and just score whatever.
Anyone who knows me or has heard me talk about Malifaux in the past, what is it, 4 years since Third Edition came out, knows how much I love these models, to the point where I think WYRD actually has a personal vendetta against me because they tried to do something to nerf them in almost every errata. Whether it's never been directly, it's always been incidentally, like, you know, making sure that Sommer can't blow them up, or, you know, making that you can't put explosives on them as well as, you know, the good explosive on them as well as you used to, like. But they're so good. I mean, any 4 Soulstone model that it's going to take some models 3 shots to take out is just great. It's just great. Not to mention they're not going to attack often, but they do have grab on, which is really good. If you bring Beau Fishbocker, anytime somebody cheats, they get to charge. Or anytime they cheat, they get to charge, which is really insane. You can like zap somebody with a gun, cheat it in, you get a charge for free, punch them, and then punch them again. And they're probably one of my favorite ones to have around for Brinn's protected aura, because they are absolutely so tanky. I love them. I take at least 2 in Mah 1 pretty much every time. I probably at least take 1, if not 2, in Mah 2 as well, like almost every time, but I'm a little obsessed with them.
I don't believe the person who tells me they can tell me every single word on the test subject card. These things just do way too many things.
So many things.
Like, for a 4 Soulstone model, I feel like this model has more text than some 10 Soulstone models. Like, I wonder if this model has more text on it than Teddy does. But like, they do way too many things. Like, they have the forage that you'll get someone with at some point during a game when you've like charged across the board for the millionth time, and you're like, oh, by the way, I just get rid of your scheme markers. No interacts required, you know. And so I hate these models. I can never remember what they do. It's too many things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't always take them, but that's probably a mistake. Like, I should take them more than I do. I really like these guys. They're fun. I find that my lists are sometimes a little tight for them, which is weird to say about a 4-stone model, but I think it's just because I've been so addicted to the Soulstone Miners lately. But I think they're great. Like, I'm not going to disagree with anything anyone said. They're 6 health with armor, with the ability, with like an option on just like crazy pumped defensive stats, and they have 4 stones. And they even have like weird random defensive tech, like they can't be executed. I don't know. That's not really defensive tech, but it's funny. I mean, it's obviously
it is.
It's sort of. It like sometimes you don't get text a card, I guess, but they are obviously they have that line of text so that you can use Big Brain Brinn's bonus action on them, which is a very good thing to do. It just gives him a 3rd AP. They're good. They're great.
Yeah,
I think
how many models can boast that they have text on them that says they don't die when they're killed? Like, that's something.
Yeah.
Literally nothing else. I don't think there's anything else that has happy accident.
Nope, it's a great rule. Yeah, I mean, they've covered it. These guys are great. Like, you should put them in your list. You will never ever be sad that you put them in your list. They're 4 stones.
Yeah.
Oh my god, why?
And the thing is, like, you're going to not get something on their card every time you play them. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've scampered push 2 and went, I could have charged. Are you kidding
sometimes
me?
you want to push. Sometimes you want to push 2 because you're engaged.
Right.
You need to get out of melee, but
that's what
yes,
you bring Fishbocker for. Then pull out 1, charge back in.
Yeah, they're great.
Stupid good.
All right, on to Mechanized Porkchop. I'm a little surprised to see this guy, but I guess not terribly. Millen, he drops a scrap, great for Mah 2, as well as just, admittedly, you probably don't have terribly too much healing in this crew, but being able to give Mah plus flips, I feel like is pretty great.
Spark
so you're not actually... Yeah, Sparks heals them, and you're probably taking Beau for some extra healing as well, I'd assume, but we'll get to that. So it's enough to make the fact that you'll probably hand out some plus flips to attack to Mah, and overall he himself is just, he's a solid model. A little bit frail in this day and age, I think, because there's a good amount of ignore armor, and especially if you know your opponent's playing Mah, you're bringing ignoring armor. So you have to worry a little bit about what faction or crew you're in against, and for that, I'm definitely going to put him in the sometimes, just where probably below Sparks, because I feel like a lot of the time you're going to want Sparks to hire him. In Mod 2, where you drop the scrap, it's a little better, but I still would be kind of surprised if he moves up the list that terribly much, because he feels like he's just there for efficiency. Maeve?
God, I hate this guy. I hate this guy so much. And I'll tell you why I hate him. Because he never, ever, ever performs as well as I want him to. The one thing I will say that is probably the best thing on his card, hands down, is Rage Machine. Rage Machine is really cool because you can just do a lot of little fun things with it. He just being able to like punch somebody for 1 damage, they get a plus to the action to the duel is really good. I mean, sometimes it's just super important. Vent Steam is really good because it puts a double hazardous aura. Like, that's, you basically cover more of the board with hazardous auras, and if you can push somebody through both of them, it's gorgeous. But
so is this like a sometimes higher, or like this is a stretch sometimes higher? Because I feel like Vent Steam is really super good in some matchups.
I would say most people would probably hire him more than I do. He dies every time I play him. So I will say for the sake of everyone else, he's a sometimes higher in both. For me, I just can't hire him anymore. He's disappointed me too many times.
Yeah, you're allowed to be mean to models in this video. We are mean sometimes, so
I would throw him to the very back of sometimes with Ma 1. Very back of sometimes.
I literally just want to reinforce. I literally have the exact same problem with him and Meifeng, where it's like, man, I do have the games where I have like the highs with him, but most of the time he just feels disappointing. Like, I know I could be doing more with 7 Soulstones than what I'm getting him. Like, he has so much. It feels like he has so much good things on his card, but to actually get them to go off in a row, like Vent Steam, great, but it rarely comes up where he's actually in a good spot with Vent Steam up in order to capitalize on it, it feels like. And it's like kind of the same with Rage Machine. It's like, it's great, but it seems a little rare that it's actually available for more than just himself.
Yeah, so we'll talk about him next. But if I take Alphonse, I will take the Mechanized Porkchop, because Rage Machine makes him fast. So Alphonse can hit the thing, get the Rage Machine, and then take a damage, gain fast.
That's cute.
That's good. But you can also do the same thing by charging a test subject into Alphonse and stampeding. So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't really like the mech chop. Actually, sorry, Landon, have you gone?
I kind of gave up my turn because I asked some questions.
Yeah, I don't like. I think you'd play him in Ma 2 because the build generating scrap is good in Ma 2, and concealment is, I think, better in Ma 2 than it is in Ma 1 because you're playing fewer stealth models and you're playing, Ma herself, who's fairly got low def and wants some kind of defense. I mean, it's kind of fun in Ma 2 to put Brinn in the concealing cloud because it makes him basically impossible to shoot. Because double negative to hit him. But ultimately, I think the mech chops are never higher in Ma 1, because if you were hiring the mech chop in Ma 1, you're trying to build towards the specific scrap marker synergy play with like Sparks and the Hopper and Survivors, and at that point, why aren't you playing Ma 2? So I would not hire the pig. And the other thing in Ma 1 is the good attacks in her keyword are all guns. So like Walking Rage Machine doesn't get as much. And in Mah 2, you've got, Mah 2 is a reasonable melee attack, and the Hopper is a reasonable melee attack, and you're probably playing survivors who have like a not terrible melee attack, so you're more likely to have melee attacks that matter in Mah 2. But in Mah 1, it's all guns. So
yeah, I'm just with Maeve on this. This guy's disappointed me one too many times.
Yeah.
But on to Alphonse. Alphonse, our big beefy boy. You're really just taking him because, as Landon knows, toss is a good action. And, well, he punches things. 346 is not a damage track to really, ever scoff at, ever. Especially when you can slap blasting on that and mutilate. Not both at the same time, otherwise it would be great. But, good triggers, big beefy attack, can move your crew forward. It's worth thinking about, but largely, because of what Maeve said, I'm just going to put it nearby the pork chops. I also agree. I don't really see it having much of a place in Mah 1. I don't really feel like this is who you want to invest your cards into, but maybe if you just need that extra deployment. Actually, where I do see it in Mah 1 is you're playing the pass token waiting game to kind of alpha somebody. You just want to toss somebody in as your 2 activations in a row kind of shtick is probably one of the bigger plays. So maybe I'll put him in sometimes just because of that. But other than that, I don't really know. He just feels I know he's a solid Gremlins model. I'm just not sure if that's good enough. Maeve?
All right, so my time for the thermonuclear take. I, especially in GG3, would take him every single time in Mah 1. Every single time. And there's a reason for that. Number one, he tosses so good in GG3. The crew does not have a dedicated tanky beater. Mah does her thing, but you sort of need another model to kind of hold back, be a second string, and then come in. He is tanky. You have Stampede to build up Glowy. Like, there's no reason on turn 1 not to push him up with a little ass and then Stampede charge him with test subjects and if you hire 2 of them, and get 4 Glowy on him, and then just heal him back up with whatever, he's so good. Like, toss is insanely good. His fist is big. He almost always has fast. He's tanky because of infused body. I love him right now. I would probably not ever take him in Mah 2 because Mah 2 has a lot of tanky stuff. But Mah 1 for me right now, he's an auto include. He's so good.
I mean, all you said was toss really good, and I can't ever disagree with that. So thermonuclear take, I think not. Always hire Alphonse. I'm in.
Nah, I don't know about always. Like, Mah 1 has so many really good models she always wants to hire, and there are times when Mah doesn't want to be like jammed down the enemy's throat because what the enemy's doing is like they're really strong. Like, they're a beefy melee crew, they're tanky. Mah's job in those cases is to kind of sneak around the edges, pick off weaker models, or leap on somebody once they've been dropped into the thicket of pit traps. She doesn't necessarily want to like face tank an enemy crew. She'll just die. I kind of don't love Alphonse generally out of keyword in this specific thing. I mean, obviously he's one of the better models in the faction, but I think in Mah 2 there's sort of like some cute play there if you give him a ghillie suit so he can throw Mah, but that's like a ton of points. That is 12 points.
Yeah.
That's too many points. And not being able to toss Mah, who is the model in that crew that wants to be in melee the most, is kind of not thrilling to me. So I would put him at low some matchups in Mah 1 and maybe high never higher in Mah 2. But I'm not super thrilled about him.
I will fight you and say middle of some matchups because he just. My honest opinion of it is just play with him. Just play with him. Like, it's crazy what things he can do being a model that just sits in the center. Now, I will say not having what was the strategy or what was the scheme where you put a model in the middle and made it
claim jump.
Claim jump. Not having claim jump does kind of knock him down a little bit, but like being able to toss models directly off of guards or stash or a guard or covert or anything like that is super good. Being able to toss your own models out of danger, toss models through pit traps into terrible spaces. I genuinely love this model. So I will say most people probably want auto include him, but I still think he's higher to middle. Sometimes include, just generally try him out.
I mean, I think he's generically just one of the strongest models in the faction.
Yeah.
So he goes in a lot of different crews, but there's nothing about Tricksy that makes me especially be like, man, Alphonse is incredible here in the same way that maybe some other crews do. But we'll try it out. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, to back up Alphonse and the beating you are going to give your own crew, let's talk about Beau. Beau is the new wonder child of EVS. And I'm not sure how great he is in Gremlins, but he is a little cracked in EVS. For similar reasons, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not very good in Mod 2. I don't feel like you need as much healing in Mod 1. I'm a little curious rules question wise. I assume you can target a scrap marker or a pit trap marker with his bonus action if either Maw or Sparks is around, right?
Well, the marker can't already be hazardous, and if Maw or Sparks is around, then it is treated as a pit trap and is hazardous, and therefore can't be targeted. So,
isn't it an ore on them?
Yeah, but the marker itself has to not be hazardous. That's a cost. That's a requirement of the action.
Yeah, so you treat it as a scrap marker when you use the action, and then.
But it's both. You don't treat it as just the scrap marker. It has the hazardous trait all the time.
Okay. Sure, I can see that reading. Then yeah, not as big of a fan anymore. I thought that was.
Yeah, it just
possible.
says friendly models are unaffected by. So
I mean, healing's good, but it's 8 costs outside of keyword. I would be a little surprised, but I guess there are the cute things you can do with it, with like test subjects, where whenever they cheat, they get to charge, or a model nearby cheats. So maybe put them in sometimes. I guess healing's just good in an armor crew that likes to attack people. I'm not sure. Maeve, just put me out of my misery.
I think it's a sometimes higher in Ma 1. There's just times where you need to heal up a little bit, and he kind of does it. If you're not, I don't think he's as good in Ma 2, just because Sparks can heal things really efficiently, because almost everything in your Ma 2 crew is going to be a construct. But Lead the Way is really good. He has a lot of good synergy with test subjects, which you're already taking. Lost in the Bayou, when combined with Scamper, means that your models can move out of the way more often than, just makes them a little better. And Showboating is always good to cycle cards. I think he's a sometimes in Ma 1. I've never actually used him in Ma 1, but a lot of that has to do with they put Beau in, and they also put Beau Peep in at the same time. And they both do very similar things. And sometimes Beau Peep is a more efficient way. So yeah, that's what I got to say about him. I don't think you hire him in Ma 2, and I think you hire him occasionally when you really need the healing in Ma 1. So,
is the Lead the Way something you're ever using during your unpack? Is that important to how this guy works, or is that really just kind of something you're ignoring?
No, you do that.
Yeah.
It'll depend on the deployment. It'll depend on the matchup, how accelerated you want Ma to be. But, yeah.
Do you have anything more to say about Landon?
No, not really. I actually
Okay.
have to go do something right now. Are you guys good to finish up the versatiles or whatever?
Yeah. So
All right.
basically, with this guy, I would say, never in Ma 2. I think Ma 1, I'd put him over the Rockhopper. I'm really shocked at how many people you guys have over Tricksy Belle, but I don't agree with all those. Anyways, the big thing with him is that Ma 1's busted busted play pattern is like leading somebody by the hand into the thicket of pit trap markers and then like letting them dance sort of merrily there. And Lost in the Bayou is really good for that because it means once they're in the pit trap markers, every time they cheat, it's another, like, you know, you're in pit traps, I'm attacking you, you're going to try to cheat because to protect yourself because it's a big important model, and every time you do, you get another point of damage and another injured. And it's just you puts you in a no-win situation. So if you're in a matchup where that's your goal, you go into the game and you're like, my plan for this game is to just basically abduct somebody into the own zone and then rattle them around until all their teeth fall out. Then that's Beau. And if you're not doing that, then leave him at home.
I would say he goes above Tricksy Belle. For that reason, I agree.
No, Trixie's great.
No, she's not.
I do like
Trixie,
but I think he has more synergy with the rest of the crew, test subjects, with punching people into and that potential healing. I feel like you're not ever probably taking both of them. But you could take one or the other.
Maybe, but I would take Tricksy a lot more than I would take Beau.
Okay. Well, we can put him over the Rockhopper and Mah 1 then. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. And then, never higher in Mah 2 because, once again, Mah 2 just has really, like, fixed lists.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little close to Christmas Dreamland on how much you can truly have all of your stuff ping-pong a guy around terrain that can just get removed, but
I mean, you need to like see it happen. I do this regularly. This is how I play her.
Yeah.
It's not hard. It's not hard to do because when you're playing multiple Bushwhackers, it's not hard to have 9 or 10 traps on the board, and you have so many ways to push somebody around when you build your list around it. It's just every model can do it. I'll send you a replay. I'll send you the replay of me versus Nick Westbrook. That's how I beat Von Schill.
On to Gluttony. I guess if you want to remove terrain, Maddening Drums is sometimes cracked, depending on the map. It can literally be so very dumb. Other than that, though, not a fan of this model. Really not a fan of this model. I think a lot of Gremlins players way over higher Gluttony, and it just doesn't make sense, especially because they got a lot of new good models lately. And without Maddening Drums really performing, I just don't see it. So I'm actually just going to throw this in Never Higher for me. I'm not a fan. I'll throw it near the top of Never Higher, I guess, just because sometimes you have hazard terrain on map, you make enough pit trap markers, / scrap markers, you truly can get a really fun Maddening Drums off. But no, not the biggest fan.
He is less desirable, I think, as the game moves forward. And just because he doesn't have a lot of tech to get him into the position you need to be. When he goes off, and it's beautiful. But I kind of like him if Load 'em Up is in the and I also kind of like him in Breakthrough because he could really ruin your opponent's breakthrough real hard. Like if they get into your deployment zone, they drop their 1 marker, and then he just Maddening Drums them into their own marker, and then they can never score it. But it doesn't happen as much as you want it to. I feel like a lot of times he's a magical Christmas land.
Yeah.
I mean, he's tech. You take him when Maddening Drums is going to be good in the matchup, and you don't when it's not. I don't think we need to say more about that. He's a tech pick.
Yep.
All right, on the Lucky Emissary, the classic go-to beater of the faction. I also feel like this guy is actually slowly being quasi-phased out as power creep went up in burns. That being said, though, I don't know. You want armor piercing, and steamroll is sometimes just the stupidest ability in the world. It does kind of depend on map. And as well as who you're playing against. So I'll put it slightly higher than Gluttony, and I'll just put it at the bottom of sometimes, because I still think this is definitely a sometimes model. If you have a really good open map where you can actually get true value off of Steamroller, and or your opponent has a lot of destructible, for example, they're also playing Mah Tucket. Maybe you use this to just mop up tons of pit trap markers, but I feel like destructible terrain is not that common anymore.
So the problem with Lucky Emissary, and I do like him sometimes, but the problem with Lucky Emissary into Mah is if he steamrolls and you have a lot of pit traps out, he's going to steamroll over your own pit traps, which is kind of a problem. However, loading him up with explosives and sending him at an opponent because he has a 0-inch melee, so rolling him into an opponent and then going, okay, hit me because you're going to get blown up as it goes is kind of nice. That's kind of fun. The problem with that is that the crew doesn't have as many good ways to put shielded now that Bokor are gone. If your opponent's playing like Titania, then sometimes he comes in decent to play. If you really, really, really need to get breakthrough, he's good. But I don't hire him. I agree with you. I don't hire him nearly as much anymore as I used to.
This guy really lost a lot of stock when Leylines left the pool.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you don't ever hire him in Mah 2 because you don't need armor piercing because you have 2 big armor piercing beaters, and you don't really want marker removal because Mah 2 really needs a bunch of markers all over the board. Mah 1, I think it's a little bit easier to avoid hitting your own pit traps because you tend to have one little cluster of pit traps, which is sort of your little inviting castle where you're luring travelers in. But Mah 2 has markers all over the board and hates having them removed. I would still say this because the absolute bottom of some matchups in Mah 1 is not a model you're reaching for very often.
Yeah.
He can get to that enemy. He can get to that far enemy guard.
He is the only real armor piercing option in Mah 1, aside from the traps themselves.
Yeah, but man, I hate his. And she's good too because if you don't take the pass tokens, if you take the card draw, which sometimes you just have to. Sometimes you don't have the card to get the card draw or get the pass tokens. If you get the card draw, you can potentially grab it or card draw into the tome you need for it. But that's the one thing, pre-Rockhopper, pre-Mah 2, that was the one thing I hated about Bayou is that you just can't. Sometimes you just can't get that tome that you need.
Yeah. Yeah. About sums it up.
Yep.
Gracie. I'm in the same spot as Gracie as kind of Mechanized Porkchop, except for almost worse. It's a similar problem. Armor 2 is not that great anymore, especially in a full armor crew where your opponent's already intentionally bringing anti-armor. Sure, you have some ways of healing. The model's always been decent. So I don't know. A lot of it obviously relies on the ride with me, which I guess you can get a good chunk more value. I'd put it above the Emissary, but and at least in Mah 1, because ride with me Mahing is probably pretty good. But besides that, I don't really see it. I don't really see Gracie anymore. It's just way too easy to remove her off the board nowadays.
Yeah, Armor 2 is, as your only real defense, is much more of a liability now. I think it's part of the reason we just haven't seen Mah 2 as much as we should have, because she is a fun master, but there's just too much armor reduction or irreducible that's sitting out there now. If your opponent isn't going for that, though, Gracie with Ride With Me can be really fun. She's surprisingly more mobile than you would think she is, just because of Ride With Me gives her some extra vectors to go from. I just feel there are better options these days. I really do, in general. I miss the times when I could just run Gracie in and just murder things and never die, but I think those days are over, especially for 8 stones.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Gracie in some matchups, but Mah just has an extremely high density of extremely playable 7 and 8 stone models, so it's hard to find room for Gracie. Her job in Mah 1 is to ferry Mah 1 forward, but I don't know that that's something you really even want to be doing all that often. I don't think that's how Mah wins games, by diving the enemy. That's just not her thing. So yeah, I obviously you never hire Gracie in Mah 2. It just even that one little use case doesn't even exist. She can't carry Mah around. She's too big.
Yeah.
So
we'll just fall slam her back by the chickens.
Yep. Slam her by the chickens.
I still hate those chickens though, so they're staying at the bottom.
You and me both, man. You and me both.
All right, let's talk about what has been pretty much a staple model, I think, of most gremlins, and that's Bo Peep. We kind of slept on her a little bit, putting her at the end. We've talked about some of the synergies she already has, why she pretty much just outclasses Beau Fishbocker for healing / unpacking. Mostly unpacking. Their unpacking is just cracked. But it is always nice to just randomly heal within an aura 8 of her. So, yeah, I think just for unpacking purposes, she's pretty. She has to be relevant. More relevant than the pig, probably less than the miner for Mah 2. Especially because I don't know how much unpacking Mah 2 really needs help with. Mah 1, I put it behind Sparks. I think because Sparks is just going to be the more reliable healing, and he does other things, whereas Bo Peep kind of one big gimmick is healing, and then, you know, just having a pretty decent attack and reckless. And he's a henchman, which is just, you know, survivability. But
she's good because she throws people into pit traps.
Yep. That's what I was going to say. I think she's important with Mah 2 because Mah 2 needs some speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mah 1 crews don't, or at least the way I play her, she doesn't tend to have a very strong melee presence. She's like a skirmishy, shooty list. So I would be very happy not playing this model in Mah 1. I don't think I would necessarily be unhappy playing her, but I don't think I'd need her. I'll put her above Beau. I'd play her more often than I play Beau.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of leaning towards as well.
Yeah, but I think you don't need her in Mah 1. You really don't. And she's good. Like everyone knows she's good. Sorry, I think I jumped the line a little, Maeve.
Oh, that's okay. I was just gonna say that in Mah 2, I think she gets a little more traction, number one, because Mah 2's crew is just a little bit slower. And she kind of gives everybody that little move. One of the problems I've always had with running into Mah 2 is that she just doesn't get to where she needs to be fast enough. Also, 1 to 2 healing on armor models, especially armor 2 models, is so much better than a model that doesn't have armor. Like, it just does a lot of really good things. And also, yeah, Hogwash Slosh, just being able to throw people 2 inches into pit traps, always good. Always good. I like her in Mah 2 better than Mah 1.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I just thought the unpack for 1 would have been kind of nice, but I guess I still suck on the concept of Mah 1 wanting to punch people with a spoon in M3E.
Yeah,
that's not
how her crew plays.
Yeah. And also turn 1, Mah can horrible hollering her own crew around. So
True.
They don't need that as much. Like, you know, she's handing out focus, pushing people around. They don't really need as much to get out. Plus you got Bushwackers already up the board a little bit. Like,
and
the
test
most
subjects can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, I see it. All right. Our spicy edition, our double master take, Zipp. I'm normally not the biggest fan of double masters unless there's a broken combo, and they have quite simply targeted me and my broken combos, and I appreciate that. That being said, it always has been kind of good in Mah. I mean, quite simply put, you like placing targets. Zipp is, you know, a god at that. So I would be a little surprised if you're not taking Zipp 1 when you're able to in Mah 1. Do I want to put it in auto hire? Just
no, he's not auto hire
good.
Even in second master.
It's not that good. It's good. It's probably Bayou doesn't have a lot of double master combos that are good, and this is one of them. I
would pay.
I guess
5,
put it in an asterisk.
7. Put it in what?
Put it like I would put mentally an asterisk on this guy, just because obviously you can't always play double masters, and sometimes you don't want to play double masters. But like, yeah, I guess
his value in 2 to me is actually decently lower.
No, his value, you don't take him in 2.
Yeah, I definitely see that.
That crew needs too many support models, and it's also not pumping out the environment that Zipp wants to be in. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously the value of Zipp went up a lot with him actually being kind of relevant because you don't need to take the interact action anymore to be relevant on the board.
Yep.
And being able to just toss people up we go is quite simply a broken attack.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
it's real good.
Here's what Zipp does in a Ma 1 crew. Ma pushes him up, gives him focus. Little Ass might also give him a focus.
Can Ma give him focus? Is creative custom keyword locked?
Oh, no.
I don't.
No, Little Ass can't. No, Ma. Horrible Holling's only friendly.
Yeah, but the trigger. I mean, the focus giving trigger.
I'm pretty sure it was.
I mean, you can always give him focus.
Yeah, it's not keyword locked. You could give focus.
So yeah, you give him focus. You push him up, and then what he does is he zaps people around where he needs them to be zapped to, but he also can drop pianos to funnel people towards your traps. And that's just really good. Plus, he has a concealing aura, so that like you can save some of your guys more often than not. I love Zipp. He just does Zipp things. Like he's a lot of fun. He's disruptive. He eats markers when you need him to eat markers. He pushes people around. Like he bullies the board so hard, and he's super fast. So when you last turn, you really, really need him to get up the board and drop your breakthrough markers. That's what he does.
I mean, well, he doesn't drop breakthrough markers, but
no, he can't drop breakthrough markers. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of a match made in heaven, in that both of these masters are just like strong, potent models that don't really do that much to support their keywords, but don't really need to because they just have good keywords and have good actions printed on their cards and have good front of card. And you just hire Zipp into Ma because Ma has a better keyword than Zipp does. If it was the other way around, you could do it the other way around. But yeah, I mean, like the obvious play pattern is he's just more of the thing that you're already doing, which is grabbing people and then like chaos dunking them into pit traps, and then they just are very shortly dead because you're stacking injured on them, which is the most degenerate gameplay pattern that Malifaux has.
Yeah, I think I just want to reiterate. I'm really not a fan of double masters. Hiring a second master. I love the format. Basically because I think people just fall into the trap of thinking that you should hire one. Like Zipp has a good card. It's almost certainly probably not worth 16 Soulstones if it didn't have the amazing synergy it actually has with Ma. And I think that's why it really comes off in Ma 1 is because Up We Go is pretty much the only guaranteed way you have of actually kidnapping somebody in Ma 1. Whereas before, as you're talking about, you kind of rely more on a gun line and then trying to get them in a little bit later just because you don't have a great way of actually doing that. Zipp is the almost being able to guarantee that that's going to happen either turn 1 if you alpha or turn 2 if you want to play a little bit more safer with your using your pass tokens to get good positioning turn 1. And that's just ugh.
The specific thing that Zipp does, I think, is that he lets you ladder somebody in, which is basically you deploy your pit traps carefully because you have like a bushwhacker or two, so you can put them up the board, and then Zipp goes and he dunks somebody into a pit trap, and then once they're in the pit trap and injured, then a Soulstone Miner, you do the Brinn Soulstone Miner trick, the miner pops out and then teleports them another 6 inches farther back towards you into another pit trap. So now they're like way in the middle of your line and just double injured and basically screwed. So Zipp starts that chain off.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't disagree with that. I was just looking at Captain Zipp's card and seeing that there are some fun things, but I can't imagine ever taking him over regular Zipp in this match.
No. Don't do that. Friends don't let
He's just not worth 16. Masters aren't worth 16 Soulstones, guys. They're just not.
Not in GG3 as well. Like GG3 just wants more bodies out.
Yeah.
Hiring a 16 cost.
Maybe you need to sometimes.
You need a broken combo in order to really justify it.
Yeah.
McCabe 2, that's a different conversation. But yeah, you need a broken combo to really justify. And I don't feel like Gremlins really have that. Zipp 1 is the closest you get in Ma 1 just because of it. He fills a role that's not quite there. And you kind of have the Soulstones to really just hire what you want and need in that crew.
So Ma 1, her game plan is that stacking injured on somebody is the most degenerate thing that you can do in Malifaux, and she's probably the best in the game at doing it. Maybe Damien better now, but Damien's Damien, so we're not going to discuss that. Generally, she has a crew full of extremely of models that can affect the board from relative safety, whether they're miners that are digging, or whether they are, Brinn, who has serene countenance and can be pretty far back, or whether it's Bushwhackers with stealth and a really long gun. And so what you do is on your turn, you sort of pick a priority target, and you're like, this is something I want to kill. And then you use the activation control you have from past tokens to make sure that you have, that model's activated and the models that can rescue it have activated. And then if you look at a well-built list, it'll usually have 7 or 8 different ways to move an enemy model. Like you've got a trigger on Bushwhacker's gun. You've got the built-in trigger. You got Trixie's lure and her built-in trigger on You're Coming With Me. You've got, Beau Fishbocker's Cheap. You've got Beau Peep's Throw. You've got Soulstone Miner's Mass Trigger on their melee attack. You've got Mah herself having Knock Aside, and pretty much everything she does moves enemy models. And so you set up a bunch of pit traps, and then you take the model that you decided to kill, and you start pulling it towards you using all these different movement tricks. And every time you do, it hits a pit trap, which reduces its stats and makes it easier to continue doing that. And then the model just dies. Like, I one activation Von Schill because every time I hit him, I was bashing him for a 3, 4, 5 and also pushing him through pit traps. So you can do this kind of thing when you're playing Mah, because the list doesn't look like it does that much damage. You got one min-3 and that's your master, and everyone else has these little dinky 2-3-5s or 2-3-4s or whatever. But when you add +1 damage and injured onto any attack on top of its triggers, that makes the attack way stronger. So that's pretty much the game plan. Is you have a bunch of pit traps, you use them to make areas of the board horrible for your opponent, and then after your opponent's activated a model, you just abduct the model and drop it in the pinball machine, and then bounce it around until you tilt. And it's a really effective strategy. It's just you need to be on top of keeping those pit traps built and knowing where you're going to place them, and also knowing what movement triggers are available to you at any given time.
Mah 2 is the master that you play when you don't necessarily need to be mobile. You just need to put a lot of control in a large space, probably in the middle of the board. So think of it like if you want to do leave your mark, if you're doing guard the stash and leave your mark, or covert and leave your mark, Mah's going to move up to a spot. She's going to try not to move once she gets kind of to where she is, because she's not wanting to spend any of her actions moving if she can help it past turn 1. And she's dropping people down a hole. She's using her harpoon gun to push people around traps. She has one of the most broken abilities in the game, which is scatter. Scatter's just nuts. If you go last and scatter people off of guard the stash, they just lose points so fast. I mean that's kind of what you do, and you kind of build towards that, controlling and being a little more tanky and sort of holding large swaths of the board to keep people out of it, instead of trying to run around and capture far edges of the board. So you're probably bringing models that can like survivors or bushwhackers that can shoot down the hole and soften things up. And then you're bringing Brinn to sort of, Brinn basically with I know what you're going to do, just holds down those triggers that would potentially kill Mah, triggers that ignore armor. And then Sparks and Mah are making everything hazardous so that it's just hard to get into the middle of the board. That's pretty much what you're doing with her. You have anything to add to that, Sam?
No, I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. But I'm interested to hear how to beat this scourge.
Yeah.
All right. It's very simple, guys. The simplest advice I can ever give you. Just kill them, lol. As big of a meme as that kind of is, realistically, a lot of the crew doesn't actually have much defensive tech, as we kind of talked about it. You have low defense and low willpower on a good chunk of these models, either one or the other. Very few of their models are sit-6 stat. I think really only the versatile models you're hiring really get up there. I mean, test subjects are kind of cute as they can get way up there, but there are interestingly some funny ways to remove enemy conditions, and that makes test subjects hilariously frail all of a sudden again. They have big wound pools is something to watch out for, so you're not talking about trying to ping them down. You're more talking about maybe trying to get a couple of big hits off with focus attacks. And then, quite simply, we go into the obvious tech picks. Mod 2, you just need to ignore armor. If you go the ping route, just know that that generally involves being nearby them for multiple turns, and that's scary. And so for Mah 1, it's the same argument. It's normally the bigger, beefier models who can just, ground things down. And you generally want either some defensive tech on getting your guy kidnapped. So that can be, the obvious answer is be guild and just have lead line coats. But a decent amount of factions are getting affixed to laugh off models or other models that ignore hazardous terrain is pretty common. So you can normally work something. And if you can't do that, you have the obvious, just outgun line them. A lot of the problem with their guns is they're stat 5, not ignoring much. They're relying on the fact they have multiple of them. If you just have a couple big ones, you can normally do a lot of damage before you're worried about them kidnapping you. Another big thing I would say to pay attention to is just your ability to kidnap their models. They're not great at rescuing unless they brought their own Tricksy Belle. A lot of the times you can just be like, hey, I'll take your model over here, beat the crap out of it, and you won't have too much of a time getting me back in. Stun really helps you let you do this because you take them in, stun them, and now they don't have any of the triggers that are moving you towards them anymore. And the crew doesn't have too much condition removal, but it does have it, so you do have to play around.
Brinn's got it.
Yeah, and Mah 2.
Yeah,
Mah 2 herself has it as well. Yeah, that's right. But Brinn's pretty much it, right?
I think, yeah, for the most part. The number one thing I'd say just to add is if you're playing against Mah 1, you just want to be able to ignore hazardous. If you can ignore hazardous, you really aren't afraid of her crew.
Yeah,
I feel need that hazardous damage.
I feel like that's the easy answer I didn't quite want to give until the end because it is kind of the clear answer. Being a corporeal, amazing against this crew.
Yeah, this crew just hates Kirai. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, it's fine. She's terrible now.
And I think the parting shot,
probably one and not isn't, I guess.
I think the parting shot about this keyword is that it's the lower end of this keyword has suffered a lot from the newer releases in the game. Roosters used to be really, really good, especially when you could dump massive focus on them. They're not really anymore. Survivors are not as good as some things. Bushwhackers are good and you auto-include them, but you're almost auto-including them for one trick. In general, their gun's not that great. There's other things that can deal with them. As the game's moved on, I feel like this keyword has slipped a little bit. It's still in the top levels of Bayou, but it's not as good as it used to be.
I do think Covert kind of gave this crew a shot in the arm because it's such an absurdly strong Covert crew, but definitely not good at guard, and Cursed Objects it's not my favorite. I think they can hang in Cursed Objects because you have a lot of weird defensive stuff like stealth, but yeah, I'd say because this crew is all about repositioning enemies and activation control. It's really good at guard and it's really good at covert, absurdly good at covert. I think the other two I'm kind of not super excited.
Have you found times where Mah 1 or where Mah 2 is just I want to take Mah 2, or is it you take Mah 2 because you want to try her and see how she does?
It's that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much everyone's take on Mah 2. God, that model looks so cool. I should play it.
Defense 4 is just so hard on a master.
Should not exist on a master. Should not. You should not have a defense.
And we got two new masters with defense 4.
Yeah,
three now because we have a title. We have an angler model with defense 4.
Yeah, but those guys have other pieces of defensive tech or defensive abilities that make their defense 4 a little bit less horrible to deal with. But it is always a huge downside.
Ulix doesn't. Ulix 2 doesn't have.
Ulix's defensive tech is that he's got 14 wounds, hard to wound, and a bunch of self healing.
Yeah.
And even then, he can be one rounded. He can be one.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not easy, but it can be done. So everyone, that was Tricksy. We hope you enjoyed this video. It's a very complicated keyword with a lot of stuff going on in it. Maeve, thanks a lot for coming on to talk about Tricksy with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're going to continue
you got me on a Bayou thing.
Oh, we'll have you back. Yeah, we're gonna continue to do these keyword tier lists. We put up polls pretty regularly, so you can check those out. If you really like this content, please give us a like, leave a comment, let us know what you think we got wrong, what Tricksy models you think are really underrated or maybe overrated, and you can always join our Discord. There's gonna be a link in the description where you can talk about Tricksy and a bunch of other keywords and just Malifaux and other games generally. So till next time, thanks for coming by the Danger Planet.